Shalom, everybody. Wishing you all the Happy New Year 2025. I don't know, happy at least better than last year. And a happy ending of Hanukkah with our prayers that all of the hostages will be released soon. They will make Shabbat with us. I'm going to give a little introduction about chapter 5. If you remember, we talk extensively from chapter 1 to chapter 4 that there is always a sage, and we try to put it in historical context. When this saying appears in this, where's the historical context? Chapter 5 is much different than the rest of the previous 4 chapters. First of all, almost all of the sayings, we don't know who is the rabbi saying it. The name of the rabbis do not appear. The name of the rabbis, they were very central and very important on chapter 1 to chapter 4. They don't appear at all. In chapter 5, they disappear, I will say. Second, we see that these chapters is ordered in a decreasing order of numbers. First, there is many sayings with the number 10, and then with number 7, and then with the number 4. So it looks like they were put together because of the number 4, and we will see only at the end of the chapter there is Yehuda ben Tema and Ben Bagbag, and that's the names that they put, but and also very later sages, if I may say so. So the order are numerical orders. So when I say something about number 10 and number 7 and maybe number 4, I'll do it next week. Number 10, if we see number 10 and also the sayings, the world was created with the 10 utterances. Number 2, there were 10 generations from Adam to Noah, and there's 10 generations from Noah to Abraham. That's number 2. Number 3, with 10 tests, our father Abraham was tested. Number 4, 10 miracles were performed for our fathers in Egypt. Number 5, 10 miracles were performed for our forefathers. And number 6, 10 things were created at the twilight of Shabbat. So we see the first 6 sayings with the number 10. What the number 10 symbolize and what the number 7 symbolize? Now, if we look at our hands, we have 10 fingers. Everybody has 10 fingers. And also, if you look at your feet, you also have 10 how is it? Not fingers. How is it? Toes. Toes. So we have 10. So actually, if the book of Genesis says that we are created on God, in God's image, so when I see my hands or my toes, I see who created me. So number 10 is very much connected with God. It's very interesting that the 10 commandments are not here. I'm going to say something about that too. But we will see God creates the world with 10 utterance, with 10 sayings. Or there will be a light, right? He says things and the world is created. Then he decided there is 10 generations from Adam to Noah. There's 10 generations. Everything connected with 10 is connected with God. He makes 10 miracles in Egypt. Why he makes 10? Because the number 10 is saying God is God presence, is God volition. That's the number 10. So why the 10 commandments are not here? I mean, if they say that with 10 utterance the world was created, there is 10 generations from Adam to Noah, because Noah could not be the first Jew. They have to wait another 10 generations from the new humanity, from Noah to Abraham, and only after that, that will be the first Jew. The first Jew was tested with 10 tests, and our ancestors in Egypt, they have 10 miracles. Why 10 miracles? Because it means that God makes the miracles. God created the world. Number 10, that's God. So why the 10 commandments do not appear here? And it cannot be just a coincidence or they forgot. In the Second Temple period, the 10 commandments were very, very important. Also for us, the Jews and the Pharisees, but also for, and especially maybe for other kind of Jews. And it was so important that the first tefillin that we know about it, for example, the tefillin that were found in Masada, instead of having the 4 portions that we have today, they have the 10 commandments. So what they used to be to put on the hand and on the head was the 10 commandments and not what we have today, the different portions. So why they took the 10 commandments for the tefillin? Why they took the 10 commandments from the prayers? They used to be in the daily prayers, the 10 commandments. Now we don't have the 10 commandments in the Siddur anymore. Why they took the 10 commandments out of the Siddur? Why they take it out from the tefillin? And why they take it out, the 10 commandments from chapter 5? Everybody will expect it. They will say 10 commandments give us God when we were in the desert. The reason is that the 10 commandments were seen as something more elevated than the rest of the precepts in the Torah. That the 10 commandments had an extra holiness, because the 10 commandments were said by God, so that were more important. In order to make that all of the commandments have the same level, all of the commandments have the same sanctity, they just take out the 10 commandments from the Siddur, from the prayer book. The 10 commandments, they took it out from the tefillin, and they took the 10 commandments out from chapter 5 as well. And that's why there is not the 10 commandments in a chapter that started with a number 10. Hi guys, hi Anita and Fred, and I Michael. Okay. If you missed something, this is recorded, so you can see the beginning. So that was number 10. Number 10 means God. Now you have to ask me, yeah, but we saw number 10 in the Bible and other things. For example, the minyan is the number 10, right? And we see number 10 when they have to put the order who's controlling who. So there is somebody control 100 people, somebody control 1,000 people, some people control only 10, right? So we see the number 10 in other things. The truth is like this: there were two countings of what is a whole in the Bible, and they both appears in the Bible. The first one was the 12 was the complete. For example, Jacob have 12 sons. That's the maximum. There is 12 minor prophets. We divided the time in 10 hours in the day and 10 hours in the night, and 12 hours in the day and 12 hours in the night. We have 24 books in the Bible, right? There's the 12 and the 12. Why there was the 12 the complete number and the 10 the complete number? Okay, the 10 we said is, I see in my fingers, I was created in God's image. 10 is the complete. God didn't make us with 12 fingers or with the 14 fingers. He made us with 10. So 10 is the complete by the creation by God. But in ancient times, they used to count also how you count, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? You count with fingers. They also count with fingers, but a different count, and I'm going to do it to you. They used to count like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have to do it with yourself in order just to feel it and understand it. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This was the full. The full was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? And then I count 1, and I continue. It will be the 13. The 13 will be 1, 2, 3, again 12 and 12. And that's why we have 5 fingers and 12 here parts. So 5 times 12 is 60. That's why I divided the hours in 60 minutes and in 60 seconds. So the ancient way to count the things to make it complete, it was the number 12. But then that was in Mesopotamia. But then on the Roman, Greek, and Greek culture, the number 10 was how we divided everything. So we can see in the Bible both counts of complete. Complete can be 12 and complete can be 10. But we don't have 12 fingers. That's why 10 is connected to the divine. Number 7, I'm going to say something about number 7, and then Professor Lachter is going to continue. Number 7, it has a meaning too. Try to think now, have a cube or book. Everything has three dimensions and 6 directions, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are 3-dimensionals, right? And 6 directionals. I don't know how to say it in English. So 6 is it symbolizes the material. The Torah says, 6 days you will work. The 7th day is for God. 6 symbolize the material, all of the directions of the material, the 3 dimensions, and 7 is the direction of the spiritual. 7 is what, that's why we put the tefillin, we do 7 rounds. When a groom and a bride get married, we say the 7 blessings, because we wish them that they have all of the material and all of the spiritual too. If they will say 5, sometimes they say, Rabbi, instead of 7 blessings, can you do 4 blessings? And they say, and then I will be wishing you that you have only the material things and not even everything. If you have 7, you have good material and good spiritual life. So number 7 symbolizes the spiritual, and that's why we're going to start now in chapter. Number 10 was for God, right? God and the connection with the Jewish people. And we're going to start now on chapter 5 about the about the qualities of the personality of us. And so I'm going to pass now the microphone to you. Professor Lachter will introduce us in our saying today.
Okay. Thank you. I look forward to hearing the 5s and the 4s and the 3s and the 2s, and I got a feeling of what the 1 will be, but that's great. Let's see if I can open this and share screen. I left it open. There we go. Okay, just perhaps before we begin,
Jesse, we're not seeing it.
You're not seeing it?
No.
Oh.
Open
right.
and then do share screen.
It's open. Share. Screens. Share.
There it goes.
There we go. Okay.
We send the blessing together?
Yes, okay. So we'll begin with that. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Kidshanu B'mitzvotav V'tzivanu La'asok B'divrei Torah. Oh, did I lose it? Am I still on screen sharing? Is it still
Jesse,
on the screen and I lost it?
Jesse,
Yes.
it's on the screen, but can you close on the left side, X out the navigation so that the text can be bigger?
I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see. You can still see the screen.
I see the
My
left
screen.
side where it says navigation.
It does not say navigation. I
Or
don't have any navigation.
on the document
Meeting.
showing navigation.
Oh, and then navigation. On top, I have file, insert, draw,
No, way
design.
down on the left, underneath all of those. Next, right in a block next to
Yes.
text. It says navigation,
Yes.
and there's an X to the right of that
Yeah.
box. Click the X.
I'm doing it. It doesn't do anything.
It's not doing it. Okay, never mind.
Let's see if I just. No, it's still too small, right? Navigation doesn't.
You're not seeing that. Okay, I mean, you can't X out of it. Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Not with the left click and not with the right.
Okay, on the bottom of the document where that has the percentage, could you increase the size of the page?
Mm,
Down in the very right bottom left corner of there's a sliding bar.
on the bottom. Yes.
Could you just move it a little to the right and then it'll make the page bigger to see?
Yeah. Press or double
Won't let
click.
you do that either? Okay, it's okay.
I see what you're saying, but it's not doing anything.
Okay, don't worry about it. Just go
Should I
ahead.
stop share and try sharing again? Share.
Click out the navigation before you click share. Open the document, click the navigation.
Click off the navigation.
That didn't work. Okay,
There we go.
there you go.
And now we're okay?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So today, the discussion is going to be how we recognize someone who's well-developed, wise. The Avot literature has been called Musar or morality, and it's been called the wisdom literature. And this week, the 7 items here are supposed to describe what characterizes someone who is golem, which means undeveloped. It's the caterpillar when he's still in a cocoon is called a golem. Here it's translated as a boar, someone who's undeveloped, has not, well, let's see how this one says. Golem meaning an uncultivated person, one who has never developed the God-given intelligence and potential that they have. Like an unformed vessel, they have not put forth the effort to perfect themselves intellectually, morally, or socially. So even if that person has learned a lot and possesses moral and intellectual values, they're in an incomplete state, constantly confused, disorganized, functions improperly, like an unfinished implement in the hands of a craftsman. So this Mishnah teaches that this rawness manifests itself in a failure to develop the 7 virtues that are listed here. And a chacham is referred to as a learned person or a cultivated person in whom these virtues are fully or as fully as they can be developed and internalized, and are all considered fundamental to the improvement of one's character and social behavior and the ability to study, teach, and practice Torah. So the Rambam says one who aspires to be a truly learned person should cultivate these values. And these are the values, the 7 things that characterize an uncultivated person. A cultivator or a wise person does not speak before one who is greater than themselves in wisdom or in age. He does not interrupt his fellow's words. He does not hasten to answer. His questions are on the subject, and his answers to the point. He responds to the first things first and latter things later. And concerning what he did not hear, he says, I did not hear. He concedes to the truth. And with the boor, the reverse of all of these is the case. The second 7, and Edgar talked about how these Mishnayot are arranged 10s, and then I went straight to the 7s, which I think are going to reflect more on our lives, are the 7 types of retribution that come to the world for 7 types of sin. When some people tithe and others don't, then there's hunger caused by turmoil issues. Some are hungry, others have their fill of food. When all are unanimous in their failure to tithe, a hunger by drought ensues. For not separating challah, we're supposed to take a little piece of the challah off before we cook it. A 10th, like a tithing, and annihilating hunger results. That plagues come to the world for those capital crimes mentioned in the Torah that have not been given over to the court, and for desecrating the produce of the sabbatical year. And the sword comes to the world for the procrastination of justice, the corruption of justice, and for those who misinterpret the Torah. I want to read that in Hebrew. Al morim beTorah shelo k'halacha, that interpret the Torah in ways they should not. So, in the wisdom literature, I'm going to skip to something I had not sent to you, but a very important Zionist poet was Yehuda Amichai. He died about 25 years ago, but he came very close to portraying the humility and lack of self-justification models in his biblical episode this week. And I just wanted to read that because, again, it's where we are, the place where we are right. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the springtime. The place where we are right is trampled and hard like a yard. But doubt and loves make the world loamy like a mole, a plow, and a whisper can be heard in the place where the house was, which was ruined. So, a little bit about what happened in this parasha of Joseph, and a little bit about wisdom. The questions I wanted to bring up and see if you could help me with this. The question about retributions is something we did discuss some already in our discussions of whether bad things happen to good people and whether we'll ever understand them. The sword or the wars that happen as a result of misinterpretation of Torah is something which I think is very realistic even today, in that some today feel that that because the Torah is abused or misused or misinterpreted, so that's why we're at war now, is we're not doing what Torah told us to be doing. And then the first thing I put here is how you personally feel you differentiate wise people or cultivated people from non-cultivated people. And I thought what people might share is an example of someone who they know who was really wise and some statement of them. And part of where I'm going with this is I'm hoping that by the time we finish Avot, and we're moving on, there are 6 chapters and we're halfway into the 5th, that you're going to think of your own wise statement, of your own Mishnah, and that you're going to write your own Mishnah. And I don't promise that in 2,000 years they're going to say, Rabbi Trainish said so-and-so, and these were his 7 comments or 3 comments, or Rabbi Morley said so-and-so. But if you have a chance to try and determine what you feel is a kind of really important wisdom that you think should be preserved, it obviously does not have to be unique. We learned that there's nothing new under the sun, but in your own unique way of saying it, then I think that's something for each of us to work on, to create your own Mishnah. And I have mine at the end of all of my letters together with my signature in terms of learning and teaching with love, and more giving is more living, and that place and community are the key choices in life. So that's mine, and you'll think about yours. Let's start with I'm not going to say Rabbi Trainish again, okay? But Nathan, and then Liz, and you could tell us either of someone really wise in what he taught you, or some wisdom that you would like to share. And Liz, you'll be next.
I'm not sure I really have anything to add. I mean, whether it's my parents, who I thought were very wise in their own way, some people that I've studied with over the years. There was a rabbi in Flemington, New Jersey, who passed away at a bit of a young age, kind of suddenly after getting ill, who also had a lot of wisdom. And people here in Israel, there's a lot of people with people from this class who teach this class, have a lot of wisdom. But I'm not sure I have any great sayings or anything to add.
What did that famous rabbi who died unfortunately young say? What was his saying that sticks with you, that you remember from time to time?
Well, just the way he was, and the type of rabbi he was, and the way he acted, and the way he worked with the congregation. It was very interesting. He stayed out of politics, and but what he did was he did what he could locally. So whether it was for the synagogue, whether it was for the community, it's Hunterdon County, New Jersey, where he helped set up programs to provide heat for poor people in the who couldn't afford proper heating for their homes. Worked for food bank and things like that. And the way he just interacted with students, with school age students, and teaching different classes.
Okay, well, you saw the wisdom and you appreciate it, and it's good that you remember him. That's great. Liz?
Yeah, just a second.
And Lorena, you'll get ready next.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you know this, Jesse, but I was raised from a young age as a Reformed Jew. And the rabbi was a new rabbi in our congregation. He was newly ordained and was the rabbi of our congregation. It was Israel S. Dresner, who is noted for being the first arrested rabbi in America on a civil rights charge. And he was a friend of Martin Luther King, which was, very special for him. But he also, as I was growing up, he took my mother on a march to Selma, Alabama, from Selma to Montgomery. He took us on a train to Washington to march for Soviet Jewry. And this was something that was, I guess, entrenched in me, that we stand up for what we believe and for those who are treated unfairly and things like that. And the way this has affected me in my life is the kids have always said to me, Mom, why do you have to be the one that always goes into school to tell them what they're doing that's not right regarding how they're presenting Christmas or other things, or that they're having a young youth minister come in and sit with kids at lunch when it's a closed lunch. And they always ask, why do you have to be the one that always, leads the parade, so to speak? And I said, this is just how I was brought up, and what it means that to, as they saw the saying, what is it, to walk softly, carry big stick, walk softly, and something. And so I don't go so softly, but I don't like seeing things that are not being done to, things being done to people that are not right.
Mhm.
And he
Well,
also died fairly recently, but he lived a long life. He also gave me my love for Israel. and sent me off on a trip when I was just turning 17 and spent the summer in Israel. And it's just, he was always something very formidable in my life. And the second person, of course, was my mother.
Well, I like that you stand up for your beliefs, obviously, and when you talk about the politics, and Nathan talked a little bit about that too. So while the rabbi avoided politics, there is this saying that all politics is local, and it's what affects you really closely. It could be as close as the politics in a school when your kids are going there, or it could be as local as how the justice system and the rights of where you are. But these are leaders, certainly.
But this rabbi did not stay out of politics because, like I said, marching for Soviet Jews, and then doing several things with Martin Luther King, including being in jail with Martin Luther King in Tallahassee and in Albany, Georgia, that he did not stay away from politics. And so they said he made a mark on me.
Yes.
Who's next?
Lorena. You're going to have to unmute yourself, Lorena.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And Gershon, you get ready right after.
A rabbi who inspires me is here, a Dutch rabbi, and he always inspires me because because he says something, and then you see so many things behind what he says. Like sometimes he says something and he gives it a twist with humor, which is wonderful, and sometimes he says something and you feel a lot of feeling behind it. And also, whatever he says, you see him being very active also in the community. So he doesn't just speak. So it's in him. What inspires me is to me, he's an incredible rich person. He has many areas in which I feel that he's active and alive and vibrant, and to me, and also wise and intelligent, and everything he says or does is like new for me and inspires me. And other people, they're not rabbis, but my father was very inspiring. A late queen was very inspiring, and then other queens or kings were not inspiring. And for me, what was the difference is that the wise queen for me, or my father, whom I consider very wise, that they spoke from a certain distance, like they said something, but then you would feel a depth behind it. And that was the thing that would inspire me very much, because you were always wondering, you knew there was much more behind what they said, and that for me was very inspiring. And in my own life, I thought of a funny example, like how you, because you said something about a wise person, he doesn't speak too much, or he doesn't speak before a higher person. In Holland, I was given, and that was a tradition. Every year I got it, and there were 3 little bottles that were actually stuck together, and it was a child's perfume. But they were, I think you know that image of 3 monkeys. One doesn't speak, one doesn't hear, and one doesn't see. And I remember that gift was always very difficult for me, because I thought, how am I supposed to live? Like, I thought I was supposed to speak or hear or see, and I could never understand who was the wisest monkey. I thought, maybe it's the one who doesn't speak, or the one who doesn't see or doesn't hear. So that puzzle is still always with me. So there's not an end to the wisdom. It's an old wisdom, but I think, if you never speak and never see or never hear, then where do you go? So those are the things that come up in me.
Okay. That's interesting that you bring up the 3 monkeys, the see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. The concept here being not that we'll never speak, but that we listen really well. And I thought we're going to get this from you as a psychologist, that really the wisdom comes from learning to really listen well when someone else speaks without interpreting them, without hastening to answer them. And then the questions are going to be to the point and the answers to the point. So you needn't not speak at all, and you certainly need to listen very well, not only to avoid evil, but to give a cultivated answer, to give a wise answer to questions that you're asked. All right, Gershon, and then we got Michael up.
Okay, so my mind has wandered a little bit as I listened to the prior speakers with their interesting comments. And it occurs to me that I should ask you just to repeat the original question, so I try to stay a little close to it.
Okay, so how do you differentiate people who are wise from people who seem to be uncultivated boors?
Okay, so the obvious answer is those whom I agree with are the wise ones, and those whom I disagree with are the boors. But we'll not get too stuck in that. I'll rephrase it to those whom I learn from, whether I learn what I do want or what I don't want, are the wise ones. Those who can't seem to explain anything worthy or clear enough for me to comprehend, those are usually the ones who are not so sharp. And there've certainly been people in my life, the people in my life here who included in this group, whom I learn a great deal from on a regular basis. There are people whom I worked with who educated me about the whole culture I had come into and shared a great deal with me. And those are certainly wise people. So wise people, I think, are ones who are willing to share, and those who say, no, I don't have time for you, are often the ones who are not so wise. I did have one particular teacher in ultrasound when I was studying that, who was a character. He was from Tennessee with the full-on Southern drawl. I won't begin to try and imitate it, which often does not sound that intelligent to people, but he turned out to be a real thinker and someone who expanded my ways of thinking about the profession and about the technology that we were using. He went on to become the technical director of the lab at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, and also to become president of the American Registry of Ultrasound sonographers. So many people recognized his wisdom as time went on, but I caught him in his earlier days. So I was very lucky.
That is lucky when you can catch someone individually who then turns out to have a huge following or people hearing them. The Rambam comments about this, that the Mishnah exhorts those who seek wisdom to study in a systematic fashion, allowing preliminary concepts and only then moving on. And then also there's a comment here about someone who is older, but it's in Hebrew, it's gadol b'chokhmah v'binyan. Binyan is also described as those who have many students. Rashi describes the minyan as a reference to if you have someone who has a teacher who has many students, is likely to gain superior wisdom and should be given preference. And there are those, obviously, who have many followers on TikTok, and that doesn't make them necessarily the wisest people you want to follow. But if you esteem the followers of a certain teacher, so that's a likelihood to choose that teacher too. And I like the way you corrected yourself, Gershom, that a wise person teaches us something rather than just saying something that we agree with. Although it's nicer sometimes to hear something we agree with, but you learn more and you become wiser from hearing people who said it first. Michael, you're one of those teachers. Let's hear it from you.
A couple of
And
things.
after you, we're going to have Anita.
A few totally different things, some based on what the rabbi initially said. All the numbers that we use in the Jewish tradition are not unique. They were typical of all of the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
7, the 10, the 12, and the 60. Because I started to jot them down as we were discussing it. The sevens, the ancients of Mesopotamia saw 7 as the 7 most important stars in the heaven. The 10, the days in the Akitu festival, which was their New Year festival. It was also a major concept. 12, there were 12 tribes in the Jewish tradition. There were 12 city-states in the Greek League called the Amphictyon. So we're carrying the concept. The sexagesimal system of 60 was what the ancient Sumerians used. It was partially through counting on your fingers to the 3 digits and then adding times the thumb to times it and get 60. 60 minutes, 60 seconds, 60 everything. So our numbers that we're using were the typical numbers of the ancient world. And they chose them for very specific reasons. But then we get to I would say, probably I learned one thing from my father, the love of history. He never pursued it, but he was always interested in history. And from my teachers, I learned something else. One is that everybody has a motive, no matter how pure or not pure it may be. As my teacher, and he was an Israeli professor, matter of fact, when I was at Queens College, he would come every, I think, 5 years to teach a course on a very high level in college. And he always said, historian is citizen of the present. We view things in the times in which we live. And from some of my other professors, I learned that there is a motive for whatever the reason be, and that you should always follow through on what somebody says. See if it makes sense. See if there are flaws in it. I still will not forget as one person wrote about this professor I had worked for, that she was wrong in something she said. And she wrote back and said, you should have gone back to the original source. You would have found out it was incorrectly cited by everybody that you copied from. So you learn that you should accept comments from people and see if they're right, see if they're wrong. And my wife once said, whether she took it from somebody or not, I will never know. It's too late to ask her. One who is quiet is thought to be a fool. To speak is to prove it. And very often that's what does happen. We have to look at things very carefully. And unfortunately, based on the society in which we live, we do not do that. We don't read things in depth any longer. We accept these blurbs that maybe a minute or two is truth without seeing what it is. Or the best one, the protest. Somebody was interviewed. Are you carrying a sign from the river to sea? What river am I seeing? Why are you asking me that stupid question? They had no clue what they were protesting. It was the in thing to do. We have to learn frequently to think for ourselves and also to temper it, to try to understand everybody's point of view, because there is merit on both sides. Zako.
That's great. And I think your point that everyone has a motive is a very important one. And I think it's easy when we hear something to reflect how we feel about it rather than reflecting at the same time why someone is saying it, where they're coming from. And the motivation for people saying what they're saying is really important. Is really important. That's great. Anita and Fred, you decide who's first out of you.
I think my example I've used before, but it seems to fit here even maybe even better. Nobody Jewish was directly involved. But when I was in university and in a nursing program, I was a big mouse, so to speak. I complained. And I had a good relationship with the dean. And one day I went to her to complain yet again, and I certainly demonstrated many of the boorish qualities that are listed here. And I was complaining about a professor who was teaching me and 3 other students in pediatric nursing, and we decided she was incompetent. And I told the dean this. She was a very, very, very wise woman. I'll never forget the woman. And she pointed out the reality of life to me. And kindness was one of her words. And the other was sometimes there are things that are built into systems that you have to learn how to work around or through or with. In this case, this woman had tenure, so there was no way the dean was going to get rid of this woman one way or the other. And she said I needed to look at how I was phrasing things and describing things, and suggested that the 4 of us, the 4 students, come up with a resolution for this problem, which she thought we could do, and we actually did. And then she ended by looking at me and said, one day, I want you to sit in this chair and you will find out this is not easy. Nothing is easy. And you can't just make changes when you think they should be made. And sometimes those changes might hurt other people. So she was an extraordinary woman. She was full of wisdom and knew how to deal with all sorts of things. So I always go back to her as an example of a wise person. And there aren't a lot of deans, I think, that are probably wise, but she was. And I always appreciated her guidance. So that's my example.
So that's a great example of the important long view of being kind. And sometimes we don't feel like being kind because our motivation is something that will serve ourselves, whereas you might have to be kind to this teacher who was not too competent and find another way to learn what you had to learn. That's a really good example, because some things look easy to one person, and then the person who actually has to do the fixing might not find it so easy, or might not even find it possible. So that's a great example. Fred, how do you choose who's wise?
Well, my mentor, Bill Paul, was a great scientist, and he taught me to focus on finding an important question to try to answer, even if it's a very difficult one to answer. Don't waste your time trying to answer a trivial question. He told me also to always maintain doubt about your answers and listen to people who disagree with you because they may be right.
That's great. I was at a table recently where we're trying to determine policy of the health maintenance organization where I work. It had to do with whether we should leave certain clinic open and whether we should be opening another one. And there must have been a dozen people at the table. And I thought that this great idea of opening a new clinic in this place where there was nobody likely to use it was not a good idea. And they all kind of, I don't know, were aghast at my having such a different opinion. But the head who sat at the head of the table, the guy who was in charge, said, no, that's really good that we have a doubter. And we may not accept his opinion, but to listen to doubters is really important. To people who challenge what we believe is a very difficult wisdom to employ, because we want to hear what we want to hear. We want to hear that we're right. We want to be strengthened. But if you can pick up in a clear way, a clear message from someone that there may be a hole in your thinking, that's really good. And as you say, as a scientist, picking the really important questions is very important. Supposedly, Einstein said he spends 90% of the time thinking about the question and the problem, and not the solution, and only 10% on the solution once he's really figured out what the question is supposed to be, what the challenge really is. So we have a lot of different impressions of that, and we're not doing a lot about punishment today and the retributions, that being from the biblical version. But we'll go on, God willing, next week with different things in the cycle, in our yearly cycle, and we'll go into the different character types of people. People who share more, people who say what's mine is mine. But we're going to try and find more character traits or virtues, is the word that the Rambam uses, virtues that lead to a good, strong, and wiser character. And congratulations to all here for continuing to try and perfect ourselves and learn and learn from each other. And it's wonderful to continue that. So for this last night of Hanukkah, which I'll be learning a lot more about this Shabbat in Modi'in, I can recommend to you, if you want to learn more about Hanukkah, to read the book of Maccabees. I read through it this year. It's a bloody book, a lot of battles, but there's a lot to learn about so many things that we kind of figure we already know because we know some of the songs and we know some of the texts. So Shabbat Shalom to all, and be well.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
Shalom.
Bye.
Tודה רבה, שבת שלום.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.